Utah State shocked the Mountain West when it left the conference and joined the Pac-12 in the fall of 2024. What is Utah State's place going to be in this new conference? Are they going to succeed, or are they going to be one of the bottom feeders? I'm going to break it down for you. This is the Let's Run podcast. Folks, welcome to the show today. Grateful to have you. Honestly, the channel has been growing and I've been really enjoying the interaction that we've had in the videos. I've been enjoying talking about the sports and, not as much the court battles, even though I do love talking about the court battles, do not get me wrong. And so welcome to the show. Please, while you are here, like this video, subscribe to the channel. I would love to hit 500 subscribers here pretty soon. And I think we're going to be able to do that. And this is a doozy. This is Utah State. I've been talking about covering this school for a while now. I have a lot of people that I would consider friends. I mean, generally we just talk online and stuff, but I really do appreciate and like a lot of people up in Logan. And I think that it's a really fun fan base. It's a place that I've been to games before, that I've seen UNLV play at. And Utah State, just because of their position in the state of Utah, is often overlooked because Utah and obviously BYU take up so much of the limelight. But, there's a really good group of people that like Utah State. So I'm honored to be talking about them today in the Conference Realignment series. Let's throw up the slideshow and let's dive into Utah State. So Utah State, I think that Utah State joining the Pac-12 really was a bad moment for the Mountain West. The Mountain West apparently and this has been rumored, had a agreement with all of the members that are still in the Mountain West, including Utah State, to sign this grant of rights, this motion to distribute money. And Utah State was going to be a part of the future of the Mountain West. And the Mountain West apparently offended the leadership of Utah State. And ultimately, Utah State said, you know what, we're worth more than this. We're going to go to the Pac-12. And kind of gave the Mountain West the middle finger on their way out. I consider that a mistake. I think Utah State's awesome. Obviously, they have a really great basketball program. I just like the state of Utah. I think it's a good place in the college sports world. But Utah State is one of the smaller athletic budgets, even, amongst Mountain West schools that are remaining in the Mountain West. They're a school that has had instability in their football program over the last several years. They've had some FBI investigation stuff. It's not, while the basketball program finally seems to have found somebody in Jared Calhoun who's willing to stay there. It is a little rocky. Utah State is not in a perfectly stable position, although I do think that they made an excellent hire in Bronco Mendenhall, as we will get into in this video. But I guess my question is, because of Utah State's financial situation, because of possible financial liabilities for joining the new Pac-12, is Utah State going to be able to do well, and I think basketball wise, we'll talk about, I think they probably will, but it's going to be tough in the new Pac-12. There's not going to be a lot of easy wins. And so, Utah State was one of the schools that joined the Mountain West in 2013. The WAC football kind of dissolved at that point, and Utah State, Boise State was in that realm that kind of joined. Reno joined. They joined in 2013. The football program had some really nice moments under Gary Anderson, Matt Wells. They were Mountain West champions in 2021. That was the year that they beat Oregon State in the LA Bowl. They won the Mountain West. It was kind of a down year for the Mountain West, but Utah State did a very good job. I believe that was the year that San Diego State was pretty good, and San Diego State beat Boise State, and then Utah State just shellacked them. And then makes the Mountain West championship game, wins that game, and obviously goes to the LA Bowl. That's their Mountain West championship. They had some obviously incredible years under Jordan Love, who is now a star quarterback in the NFL for the Green Bay Packers. But really the crown jewel of Utah State has been their basketball program. It's just been really since 2017. It's just been an unbelievably consistent brand. Obviously, they have Stu Morrill, and he had done a great job in the past building up Utah State, but then they dipped a little bit right when they joined the Mountain West. And then 3 or 4 years into their tenure in the Mountain West, their basketball program really took off. Again, like I mentioned before, their athletic department doesn't have a big budget. There's a lot of turnover there. And again, there was the FBI investigation stuff. So all is not always great. And even right now, Utah State recently lost their athletic director, Deanna Sabo, and I actually don't know how to say her name. I read her name a lot. She didn't leave to be an athletic director in a power conference. She left to be like a deputy athletic director at the University of Maryland. So right now, I believe that they just have an interim athletic director, and they're currently searching for a new athletic director. Um, Logan itself as a city is, it's not the biggest city, and I actually don't love Logan as a place just because of its geography. Like it's very beautiful once you're Cache Valley. That's the valley, kind of the geographic area where Logan is situated, and that's where Utah State is. Cache Valley, I don't. The reason I don't like it is because you have to drive through a canyon to get there. You don't have like great airport or hospital access, and the canyon that you have to drive through to get to Logan. I lost a friend in there in a motorcycle accident, and I've driven through there, and I just don't like it in the winter. And so, Logan's not my favorite place to get to, although once you're there, it's very nice looking, at least, and Utah State's campus it's very it's got a very classical college feel to it. But Logan, its primary market isn't Logan, it's Salt Lake. That's where people watch, that's where the viewership from Utah State comes from. And, in that market, it's a big market. Utah State's third, behind the University of Utah and behind BYU. But, Utah State's a decent sized school, and it's got a good alumni base, and a lot of them are from Utah. And a lot of people that want to get out of the Salt Lake kind of Utah Valley, that's where Provo is, and BYU, they end up going to Utah State because it's kind of, you get away from the craziness of central Utah. And but its position, it really is a distant third place behind BYU and Utah, which has led Utah State kind of having a chip on their shoulder. Kind of a, I don't want to say little man syndrome. I think that's an unfair characterization, but they have a chip on their shoulder because they're third place and everybody knows it and they know it, but they still think that they can provide value. And in a lot of ways, they really can. Let's talk about their facilities. So Maverick Stadium, really picturesque. I mean, look at this view over here. I actually think it's in terms of views, it's probably not. In fact, I don't think it's. BYU is a pretty clear number one in terms of mountain stadium views within the state of Utah. And then I would have Utah State here, the one in Logan, a pretty clear number two. I think it's better than the University of Utah's in terms of just a view. In terms of the stadium itself, I have been in it before. I have not seen a football game in there before, but I have been in it before. It's got a few complaints. It's not very big. It's only 25,000 seats. It's pretty small. It's got a cool like little athletic facility attached to I believe that's the north end zone. That's kind of where a lot of the athletic facilities are. Some of them are. Um, you know, it's just kind of small. It doesn't have great amenities. It's a little old. You do not get good like cell service there, and it underwent a renovation, but I think it needs even more work to even fit in with some of the other schools in the new Pac-12. So not all of them. I think it's probably better than like obviously Texas State Stadium. It's similar, I guess, to Fresno Stadium, although Fresno Stadium is considerably bigger. Maverick Stadium is fine. It's not going to be the jewel of Utah State, but it gets the job done, and it's a nice place to watch a game. But it needs probably some more upgrades, even though it recently got some decent upgrades. It needs more, in my opinion. But again, it's one of the best views in all of college football, and it's a fun place to watch a game. Then we have the D. Glenn Smith Spectrum, the Spectrum. This is a really great place to watch a college basketball game. The student section, the herd, is fantastic. They do a outstanding job of creating a great home court advantage for Utah State. The fans are there. I mean, in the winter, it really feels like the whole valley gets behind Utah State basketball, and it's just an outstanding place to watch a college basketball game. I couldn't be a bigger fan of it. I wouldn't put it ahead of Viejas or the Pit, and I have seen a game there. I saw UNLV play Utah State in Logan. I wouldn't put it ahead of either of those stadiums, but I would definitely put it in a third place in the current Mountain West. That's probably my third favorite stadium. It's far better than Boise's. It's better than Wyoming's. It's better than UNLV's. It's better than Reno's, but it's probably still behind the Pit and Viejas Arena at San Diego State. They have a practice basketball facility indoors, looks nice enough. They have the Lob Athletics Complex. It's kind of where a lot of their other athletes, and I think the football team, I think uses it too. I'm not 100% sure, but Utah State's got very reasonable G5 athletic facilities. They're very, very squarely reasonable for what a G5 school could hope and have. Um, and yeah, this is kind of where I've talked about this briefly. So I won't spend too much time on this slide, but I think it's just I lived in Utah for 7 years. I've got tons of family in Utah. Utah is kind of like a second home for me. I went to BYU. That's my alma mater. I did that for my undergrad. Obviously, I went to UNLV for my law school education, and I grew up in Vegas. But most of my family, all of my family, went to BYU. And I think it's important for you to understand the context of just how big of a deal BYU and Utah as two separate institutions and the rivalry is in the state of Utah, and how far behind Utah State is from those two schools. Um, and it doesn't mean Utah State isn't important or has value, but non-Utah, it's the holy war. It's one of the most vicious and just like brutal rivalries in all of sports, let alone college sports. If you haven't been to a holy war game, it's truly special. And it's actually a little scary because the two fan bases, and there's a religious element to it, obviously. It engulfs the whole state of Utah, and Utah State is often left in the background. If you listen to talk radio, the first 3 hours are all about Utah and BYU, and then there's a 15-minute segment towards the end about Utah State. And it's just going to be tough to get out of the shadow of these two bigger programs. But obviously, I am a fan of Utah State, and I think that they have value. But Utah's a very kind of tight knit area in terms of geography. Like 80%, not 80%, 70% of Utah's population lives in like a 1 hour and a half like metro area, basically from Payson up to Ogden. I guess that's not the last one, Heber. And Utah State's competing for that against two ginormous brands. And so you just have to understand Utah State's place in the state of Utah. So let's talk about their attendance. Their football has been post COVID not great. Obviously, again in the Jordan Love era, it was very good, but 17 to 18,000 per game, not great. Their basketball regularly kind of sells out. It kind of reminds me of New Mexico, although Utah State's had more success football wise than New Mexico has, obviously. But their basketball arena sells out or draws near capacity crowds like every game. And performance wise, again, they had that Mountain West Championship in 2021, but ever since then, Utah State football has been pretty bad. I got to be real. And if Utah State wants to compete in the new Pac-12, it's not going to be enough to do it on basketball alone. They have won the Mountain West Championship in basketball several times. They went to the NCAA tournament. They won a game. I believe did they beat TCU or no, I can't remember who they beat in the 2023 basketball season in the NCAA tournament. But that basketball program's humming. But that football program, I know that they've won in the past. But I don't. When I'm evaluating a school, I don't really care about your past winning. I care about if you won a Mountain West Championship 5 years ago, or if you went on a streak or you had a great 5-year run from 2014 to 2019. Are those things relevant? Yes. Is that 5-year run relevant? Yes. Does it matter that you've been good before? Yes, it does. But what I care about more when I look at a football program is what is its current trajectory? I like to look at a holistic, what have you done for me lately type approach to a football team. And I guess we can move on to the next slide here and say, how do I see their next 3 or 4 years going? And that matters to me a lot more than what happened 5 years ago. And so Utah State football has some really good things going for it right now. The Blake Anderson fiasco is firmly behind them. They've hired a outstanding head coach. If you don't know about Bronco Mendenhall, let's talk about Bronco Mendenhall. Obviously, this is the 2000. He was the head coach at BYU from 2000 to 2015. I didn't realize he was there quite that long. He had an incredible career record at BYU, multiple 10-win seasons. He's a really disciplined guy, really believed in BYU's culture. I think, he got a little burnt out from BYU, being BYU's head coach. He ends up going to Virginia, has one really good year there, but then kind of starts to struggle seems like he's dealing with burnout. Comes back to New Mexico in the Mountain West after only one season at New Mexico, leaves. Now, I think part of it is that he's just a better fit in Logan. Some of it's that New Mexico, is having issues, and I shouldn't say they're having issues, but I think Broncos a better fit in Utah State, and he had some family things that were bringing him to Utah State. And Utah State has better football potential, probably, definitely, and obviously history than New Mexico. So it made sense for him, especially after that job opened up. But Bronco Mendenhall is just a stalwart guy. He took a BYU program to really consistent winning, even if he could never quite get them over the hump. And he will turn Utah State into a respectable football program pretty quickly. I don't know exactly how high he can take them, but I do know that he can definitely put Utah State in a good position, at least year in and year, a respectable position year in and year out. And so, let's look at their schedule for 2025. I don't know exactly. I go through so many schedules and predictions and stuff. And when I wrote this out, I had them at 4-8. I think that I guess we'll go game by game. Maybe ignore this 4-8 right now, and I'll just go game by game here. I do think Utah State will beat UTEP. UTEP, they announced today that Malachi Nelson is going to be the starter there. Thank goodness. He's the former number one recruit of the 2023 class. He was at USC, and then he went to Boise State. Could have lost the job to Maddox Madsen. And then this year at UTEP, he was fighting Skylar Locklear for the starting quarterback position, and he did indeed win it. So good for him. And I think Utah State, however, being at home, Bronco Mendenhall is a good coach. I think that they'll probably pull out that game versus UTEP, although it could be a very entertaining game. They will play Texas A&M. They're going to get crushed there, so 1-1. They will lose to Air Force. I think Air Force is going to be pretty good next season, even though that game is in Logan. They should beat McNeese. So they'll be 2-2 through 4. I don't think they're going to beat Vanderbilt. So we have 2-3 there. I think that they'll beat Hawaii? Yeah, they'll probably beat Hawaii. 3-3. I think they'll lose to San Jose State. I think they'll probably lose to New Mexico or Nevada, one of those two games, and then they will end their season on so I think 4-8 is a fair prediction. 5-7 is also very possible. I don't think they'll be bowl eligible. They'll be respectable, and they will probably be a team that you won't want to play because they will be very physical. But I think a 4-8, 5-7 type outlook is pretty reasonable for the 2025 season. And so, what is Utah State's future in the Pac-12? When you look at the football schools, do I think that they're going to be, when I'm projecting out their next 3 to 5 years, do I think they're going to be better than Boise State? No. Do I think they're going to be better than Fresno State? No. Do I think they're going to be better than San Diego State? If San Diego State can make a good hire, San Diego State can be a really good football program. But I would say probably on par with San Diego State. Do I think they'll be better than Texas State? Probably. But, I see them as a middle to lower tier team in the new Pac-12. I don't think they'll be better than Boise, Oregon State, Fresno State, Washington State, and Colorado State. If Colorado State, again, it's kind of like San Diego State. If Colorado State can get the right guy at the coaching position, they'll be pretty good. But I just don't think that, Jay Norvell is that good of a coach. And so I see them being kind of a middle tier. I don't think that, like the title of this video says, I don't think Utah State is going to be the bottom feeder of the Pac-12. Obviously, we like to ask that question because financially they look like they could very well be. But I think there's enough institutional support there, and there's enough belief in that program, and there's been big fundraising efforts. I think that they should be able to be at least a middle to lower tier Pac-12 team. And but I would just say that Utah State is going to be 4 or 5 years from now. If this Pac-12 situation, if the finances aren't great, Utah State could be in a not so great position 4 or 5 years from now. That's just the lower level Pac teams, which I do consider Utah State, even though I know that that's not necessarily fair because Utah State's great and has a lot to offer. I think that the lower level Pac teams, or at least financially specifically, I guess when I'm saying lower level, I mean the teams that have most money, they could be in some trouble 4 or 5 years from now after this 4 or 5 year run. And especially if, the lawsuits go the way that I don't know. I don't know how the lawsuits are going to go, but there's going to be financial obligations, and middle to lower tier schools in the Pac-12 are going to be have some stress. And so I think Utah State's a great school. I think it's a great institution, and I love the fans that I talk to from there. And I think it's an unbelievable, there's witchcraft and wizardry going on with Utah State basketball. No matter who's the head coach there, they win games. But football wise, Bronco's a good guy. He'll definitely make them respectable. But will he make them a contender? I don't think so. I don't think so, even though I deeply respect him as a coach. So, guys, please let me know your opinions here. I hope I'm not being too harsh on Utah State because I really do like them. And I really do wish that Utah State was still a part of the same conference that UNLV was a part of. I really do. Just because I love the state of Utah. And even though I don't love Logan as a place, I deeply respect it. And I respect the fans of it. They're really passionate. So let me know your thoughts. You think I'm crazy? How do you feel? How do you think I feel? Middle to lower Pac-12 team. That's how I got Utah State. What do you think? Guys, thank you so much for checking out the video. Please subscribe to the channel. Please like it, and let's run.